Okay, class, I am back. I want to then continue going through this article. Thanks for waiting and listening to me drone on a bit in the last. I didn't mean to go so long, but again, I'm trying to set some expectations for you here in this first video in the course that can help you throughout the course. So hopefully all of these won't be so long-winded. And I actually didn't even realize the last one had cut off, but no big deal. We can just go ahead and get back to where we were, and we can finish the thought here, and we can kind of finish our discussion of assignment 2.2. Let me just get back down to the hypothesis section. Whoops, went a little bit past it. Thanks for your patience here. Okay, here's where we were. So we were talking about hypothesis, and that there's some nice specific things down in here, down in this last paragraph, where they're going to give you some great clues to answer that hypothesis element on the lit review template that I went over in the last video. So pay close attention there. Let's move on though and talk about some of the other sections of a research article and what's going on in this research article. So the next section here is the methods. It's nice and bold for you. In a method section, it's going to be a lot more straightforward, which is kind of a nice thing. They're going to, an ideal method section in psychology just kind of gives you bam, 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 bam. Here's what we did. So we can pick up some real quick things here. There were 39 participants. 19 individuals met this criteria. This is what's known as a clinical sample because they're in an outpatient clinic or they're attending therapy at an outpatient clinic. So they meet some diagnostic criteria. So that's one of the groups in this study is this clinical sample. There's another sample where they've got some athletes where they recruited people from a triathlon association in Western Australia. But that's a pretty hot triathlon. A lot of things that can poison you in Western Australia. I would not be doing triathlons there. But that tells you something about this sample, that there may be people that aren't suffering from some of those concerns that the people in the clinical sample were. No research group is perfect. It doesn't mean that people running triathlons can't have mental health concerns, but this is just one way that they're trying to get two different samples. Again, they're talking a little bit more about recruitment and where they got some of these folks. Talking a little bit about some of what these people came in with. So let's move on. Those are the people in the study. Some measures. This is really good to know because one of the questions in our template here, one of the things you're supposed to do on this assignment is talk a little bit about how personality was assessed. So, bam, here you go. Here's some ways they're doing it. One is for the variable of perfectionism, the positive and negative perfectionism scale. And that tells you a little bit about that scale. A structured clinical interview for DSM-4 disorders. So they gave a structured interview to try to figure out what types of diagnostic criteria for different mental health disorders that folks had. They used the depression inventory. Here's another really big one for this study, is that the NEO Personality Inventory Revised. This is a 240-item measure of the 5-factor model of normal personality, consisting of those big 5 factors. Okay, so here you see them again. And that's important to note because this is the way that they're measuring personality here. So important to key in on that. One of the things we want to try to identify in this course is ways that personality is being measured. Procedure. This is a pretty brief procedure section. Usually you're going to see these a little bit more involved, but here's what we can find out of this one. All participants completed an information and consent form So that's an ethical consideration, right? They had to consent to this. Research was approved by the Curtin University Ethics Committee. That's another ethical consideration. So they're running this through a review board to make sure they're doing an ethical study. The athletes return questionnaires via mail, and the clinical group returned questionnaires at the clinic. So basically what they did here is they used a questionnaire method to obtain all this data. And so you can think about maybe how using a questionnaire via mail might be a little bit different than doing an in-person questionnaire. But bottom line is it's hard to get data in research. And so they use this by doing a mail system or using the people at the clinic to maybe help facilitate this a little bit and administer the questionnaires to the clinical group. So let's summarize what we have here, because I'll do like sort of a quick version. So we're talking about the method section. We can find here that there's two groups. One is a clinical group that was at a clinic. The other non-clinical group, they used a triathlon association, which might not be the perfect way to do it, but that's how they did it. Talks a little bit more about the clinical group here and the measures. So the two big measures maybe to key in on for this study is how did they measure the one variable of perfectionism. They used this test right here, the positive and negative perfectionism scale. And the other really important measure for you here is the NEOPIR, which was a measure of those big five personality factors. So you've got your two variables, you've got your two most important measures. And a little bit about procedure and ethics there. Okay, next section of a research article is results. Results is where they're going to give you a lot of stats. One tip I have for you is to skip this and come back to it. And you'll see why in a second. Results are, it's a very dry section in a research article. They're giving you lots of stats that you don't necessarily need to be concerned about in this course. At some point in your psychology major, if you're a psych major, you'll do a stats course. You'll start to talk about what all this stuff means. But, you know, it's important to kind of go back and try to discern what they're saying here, because they usually give some nice summary statements, you know. So in this part, they're talking about how did they discern that the clinical and athlete group were different people, you know, that they had some significantly different scores in perfectionism and distress. That's kind of important because they're trying to show that these are two groups that are a little bit different and maybe have some different concerns in their life. They're giving some general scores on how they did in these personality dimensions. Okay, so they're reporting the data in full here for you. And that's another way that they're meeting an ethical consideration, is they're giving you a full scope of the data so that you could actually replicate the study if you had all the instruments. So this is what other researchers are looking at to try to figure out, you know, the details of what they did. So they got some nice tables there. Again, a lot more stats. But again, you know, I don't want you to get bogged down in this, okay? Because what you'll find is that you can really get bogged down in a results section, and it's not helping you a whole lot. So save that for stats class. I think a section of this article that's going to help you a lot more is the discussion section, because they're going to kind of talk about all those results in plain English. So in this discussion, we can see some things that can help us out. Again, topic sentence are helpful. They're saying that the majority of their predictions were supported, as expected. Higher negative perfectionism was associated with higher neuroticism and lower agreeableness in both the athlete and clinical groups. I guess I don't have a voice for radio. Our prediction that negative perfectionism would be negatively correlated with extroversion was supported in the athlete group. So some of these topic sentences can help you find some really quick ways to answer some of these questions. Now, don't just get in the habit of like copying and pasting this stuff. You know, try to put some of this in your own words. Try to show that you're kind of understanding what these sentences mean a little bit. You know, it's okay to use quotes every now and then, but like, I'm not so concerned that you're quoting an article as I am that you're showing me that, okay, you're picking up some of the content of the article. So don't fall into that trap again of just doing these giant block quotes and just pasting it as your answer. It's going to help you to actually try to figure out what you're talking about in this. So if you got to read it through a couple times, you got to read it through a couple times. That's okay. But, you know, I'll kind of leave it up to you to get through this discussion section. Another important part of this is limitations of the study. It was correlational. Okay, so that's another answer that you're looking for here. They're asking about research design. So you can talk about that, yeah, this was a correlational design. They had a numeric variable on perfectionism, and they did a mathematical correlation with a numeric variable on personality, on some of these personality scales. So we know that correlation does not infer causation, and they're talking about that a little bit, talking about sample size. They only had 39 people. So it's hard to generalize from just 39, whereas if they had 4,000, that would be more generalizable. Again, here's another final summary statement that you can look at to try to kind of narrow this down for you and keep it simple. So that's another great place to look to get some easy answers, and to help not only that, but also, you know, reinforce what this means for you. What are they actually saying, and what does it mean? Because that's going to be important for you to actually learn some stuff about personality in this course, right? Okay, so just wrapping up here, all research articles in psychology are going to have a reference section, and that's so that people reading the article can, if they want to do more research in this line of research, find all this stuff and see if they agree with it and see if it's helpful to them. So that's that. I'm going to zoom back up to the top. So that's just another part of this trip through the research article. So I hope at the end of this second video here that you've got maybe some ways that you feel you can approach this 2-2 assignment. You've got some ways to kind of pick apart what's in a research article. You have a sense of what some of my expectations are. Again, just so important that you take a crack at it. I don't expect, you know, perfect answers. I expect answers at a 200 level psychology course, which means that there's times you're going to struggle. But if you just like give me some reasonable answers, if you try to explain them a little bit, if you give me some content, try to add a little detail to what you're saying, and you know, try to read this stuff thoroughly and try to answer in ways that make sense to you, you're probably going to do all right. And you might do a lot better than you think. So good luck on this assignment. And as always, hit me up with any questions that you have, and definitely hit me up if, you know, there's part of this video that is confusing to you, because that can help me make a better one for the students and clarify things. Okay, thanks for watching.